Good evening, everyone. I am Chris, and I am back with another movie review here to talk about The Banshees of Inisherin. One of the things I was most looking forward to about this film was the actual pronunciation of the name. So I think hopefully I got it right there. This is the dark tragic comedy film written and directed, by Martin McDonagh, and reunites Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell as the two lead characters, reuniting them under McDonagh's directorial debut of In Bruges back in 2008. So it's great to see them back on screen together. Fantastic pair, and very, very interesting story with this one. Like most of the Academy Award nominated films that I've seen this year, I pretty much knew nothing about them going into them, and I kind of like that with films now. I've sort of stayed away, unless it's a big blockbuster film. I've stayed away from the movie trailers, and I tend to just go into the film, especially these Academy Award films, because it's nice to actually go to the cinema and feel like I'm watching an actual film and not some big loud CGI filled crap and your Marvel movies now and whatever. It's nice to actually touch base with a proper film. We've got Carl. How you doing, mate? Hope you're doing good. I'm doing all right, keeping on as usual. The film, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is about two lifelong friends, obviously played by Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, who find themselves at an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship, with alarming consequences for both of them. As I mentioned, this is a dark, tragic comedy, so there's a lot of weird and wonderful things that happen in this film. I guess just sort of going into it, I really love McDonagh's direction. I wasn't the biggest fan of Three Billboards in Ebbing, Missouri, which was his previous film back in 2017, but I did only watch that film the once. There were aspects that I liked about it, but it's a film that I probably will have to go back and watch at some point. But I love his style, and pretty much all of his films are darkly comedic in some way, and it's just a tone. That's my sense of humor. So I had awkward moments in the cinema today where I was laughing at jokes and no one else was, but I guess that's just my sense of humor. And it's a very simple story. What I was immediately struck with about this, and after watching the film, subsequent reading on the film and a bit about it, this is actually based on Irish mythology, an Irish folklore tale, I believe. Obviously, they played very fast and loose with some aspects of it, but the presence of the Banshee character who is in the film, and we'll talk about the themes as we go through. As I say, I don't have a plan for this one. I'm just kind of letting my mouth do the talking, and hopefully something comes out of it. But immediately, without even knowing that this was based on Irish mythology, I was immediately hit with a sense of how the fable quality that it has to it. It's almost like a cautionary tale, really. And you're thrown into this situation, and it's like, well, why has this guy broke off his friendship with this guy? And you're in Colin Farrell's shoes here, and you're trying to piece it all together and work out what's going on. And I was absolutely gripped by it. It's just shy of 2 hours, and I absolutely fell in love with these characters and this place as well, the fictional Irish Isle of Inisherin. It's set just around, I think it's set like in the 1920s or at the tail end of the Irish Civil War. I don't know much about the Irish Civil War, in all honesty. Ireland's had many troubles over the years, and the Irish Civil War is another one of them. And they kind of address that in the film as well, that even the people living on Inisherin, Irish people, don't even know what's going on with the Civil War and who's doing what and who's shelling who. And but it's a period of history I honestly don't know much about, and I haven't done any reading on it, so that's on me. One thing that I was immediately struck with, though, was just the location shooting on this thing, and the cinematography as well just looks absolutely gorgeous. I don't know whether this film's trying to say that it would be nice to live on Inisherin, because a lot of the themes surrounding this film are to do with isolation, depression, not living a fulfilling life, one's own mortality. And Inisherin's kind of presented, and really the film in general with its characters, is presented as almost this purgatorial place where people just kind of live their day-to-day, their usual humdrum lives. There's probably like 100 people or less living on Inisherin, and it's cut off from the mainland. It's so remote. and it plays into that sense of isolation. But the cinematography, so the cinematographer was Ben Davis. Actually, I wasn't familiar with the name. I checked what he did. He worked on the 2010 film Kick-Ass, which I think looks fantastic as a film. And beyond that, he's done a lot of the Marvel movies. So a lot of these big sort of CGI filled thing. And I know obviously they still need cinematography, and even films like that can have beautiful cinematography as well. But this was something else. Every single frame was gorgeous of this thing. And the location shooting and the lighting as well, whether it be the sunsets and just these beautiful islands in the distance. I mean, I was watching this film and I was like, I would like to, I don't know if I'd like to live on Inisherin, because I kind of exist with, you know, I need my technology. I need electric. I'm a child of the modern generation, unfortunately. But I could go here for a weekend, you know, just to touch base with nature and stuff. It looks phenomenal. And our characters as well, Colin Farrell, and I mentioned this when because I went to the cinema today with someone I know, and I was having this conversation afterwards, just how good of an actor Colin Farrell is. And he really is, and he's never really in the conversation for best actors of all time, or, you know, really good actors. But he's fucking brilliant. If you look at that guy's body of work and his range as well, the different characters that he's playing, I think the thing that brought it to mind was the fact that I keep getting Facebook reminders that the Penguin HBO series is filming now or something, or is in production. And you just see his character in that compared to this, and even stuff like in Bruges or Daredevil, in, you know, where he played Bullseye. It's crazy at how good of an actor he is and how varied he is. And Brendan Gleeson's always great as well. Yeah, I'm trying to honestly think what else to talk about this film. I don't want to give too much away of it, and that's why I'm kind of dancing around a lot of the stuff, really. I'm going to talk about the folklore elements to it, really. You've got the character, this old woman who, her name escapes me, but she's kind of like the crazy cat lady on the island. She's this wizened old woman who people like to try and avoid if they can. And throughout the film, there's definitely a tonal shift to the film. It is quite funny, and you know, as I say, it's a dark comedy kind of thing, but there is a massive tonal shift about halfway through the film where things get a little bit gory and a little bit grim. And that's where the folklore elements really came to the forefront for me, was in that latter half of the film, where this old woman, she almost becomes like one of the witches from Macbeth or something. She becomes a harbinger of doom, prophesizing death, saying that 2 deaths will come to Inisherin before the month is out, kind of thing. And it did remind me of something like Macbeth, and then I read afterwards that it is actually based on an Irish myth, loosely based. There's elements of it as well that kind of, it's just the Irishness of it probably, and the small community that reminded me of Father Ted. The fact that news travels fast around the island, everyone knows everyone's business, and it's that sense of community, you know, in those small communities where people will probably understand that if you come from a small village. Like, I live in a small village, and people are always the same outside, you know. But especially on an island such as this, where it is so cut off from everything. And you really get that sense of purgatory. You've got Brendan Gleeson's character who, I'll go into the film a little bit in depth. All of this is presented within like the first half hour of the movie, so I'm not going into massive spoilers here. The reason he cuts himself off from Colin Farrell's character and just immediately doesn't want to talk to him is because he finds Colin Farrell incredibly dull, and that he hasn't really got anything of worth to say. It's the usual humdrum, boring, you know, easy conversation that people have, you know, the small talk, and he's over it now. He's an aging man, and you can tell he wants to leave a mark, you know, he wants to leave something behind after he passes on. And he has this long spiel in the film about, you know, people that have died centuries ago, such as Mozart, I believe he brings up. We remember their music. We remember artists' works, you know, whether it be paintings, whether it be poetry, whether it be music. That's the stuff we remember. We don't remember if someone was nice in their life, or if, you know, if someone lived this humdrum life. We don't remember those aspects. We remember actual artistic merit and what they have given to the world in an artistic fashion. And he wants to do the same. He's a musician and he wants to write music and he wants to spend all of his time writing music and leaving behind his songs so that people will remember him that way. And every time Colin Farrell tries to have a conversation with him, he says, look, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to cut off one of my fingers. And I'm going to keep cutting off one of my fingers until you get the message that I no longer want to talk to you anymore. So we've got that aspect there that, you know, he's a man in his twilight years, probably his autumn twilight years. And he wants to spend the time that he has left away from the boring mundanity that is Inisherin. You get the sense that many of the people on this island haven't really traveled to the mainland all that much, and they're wanting more. They're wanting to move on in some way. And on the flip side, Colin Farrell's character is the character who is the constant, who wants to remain on Inisherin. That's all he's known. That's his home, and that's who he is. You've got Kerry Condon's character, who plays Siobhan, who plays Colin Farrell's sister in the film, who is very depressed and unfulfilled, and she hasn't settled down, and she's not married, and she hasn't really lived a fulfilling life. And she's looking for a purpose. She gets swept up in her books that she's reading and her novels, and she dreams of a better life. And in a way, you can kind of see that she connects with Brendan Gleeson's character. She doesn't necessarily agree with the fact that he's just all of a sudden cut himself off from his best friend, Colin Farrell, but she can understand this crisis almost that he's going through, this despair that he's going through, that he needs to do something with his life before it's too late, because Inisherin is a place where people live and they die, and that's it. She gets a job offer halfway through the film and decides to leave, and she begs her brother to come with her and chooses not to. And you get the impression that, you know, she will never come back to Inisherin. She's the one who got away. You've got a bunch of other characters as well. It's quite a small cast, really. Barry Keoghan's character, who's being beaten up and sexually abused by his father, who is ultimately just looking for love and a connection with someone. And ultimately, when he doesn't find it, it leads to tragic consequences, which are quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Up for debate of how he could potentially die. It's like, was it suicide? Was it an accident? And they keep it ambiguous like that. And then, as I mentioned, and then you've got Colin Farrell's character, who just represents that constant. So I love the sense that Inisherin is like this purgatory for all these people. And then you've got this kind of crone, this witch-like character who is prophesizing death and ill tidings to Inisherin. It's really kind of wonderful like that, and it is funny, and I love this cast of characters, and it's such a simple premise, really. This guy randomly stops talking to his best friend one day, and then things escalate out of control, and these two men that just have this grudge against each other, that just randomly have this argument one day that blows up, and then there's tragic consequences to everyone around them, including some innocents as well, which really makes everything come to a head at the end of the film. The music as well, I quite enjoyed Carter Burwell's score. He wanted, and I think this is a quote here, he wanted to make it almost like a Disney-like soundtrack. He didn't want it to make it like a traditional Irish soundtrack. He wanted it to have an identity of its own. And I guess if he did say that he wanted to make it almost like a Disney score, that adds to that element of it being, you know, like a traditional fairy tale kind of story. And it gelled really well. It did. And there's some absolutely gorgeous shots in this, as I mentioned, with the cinematography. That's the thing that really stood out to me and just blew me away. And I'm very glad that I didn't watch the trailer or anything before going into this film. Would I rate this better than In Bruges? I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've seen In Bruges, and it is a film that I do really, really enjoy. But it's just great to see Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell back together again, and just a really nice paired back story. I think so far, out of all the films that are nominated for Best Picture, I mean, I've still got 4 to watch. I do want to say that. I've still got 4 films that I need to watch. There's a Women Talking, All Quiet on the Western Front, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then there's one other film as well that's on the list that I haven't seen yet. So I've got 4 that I need to get watched before the weekend. So I'm probably going to have to watch another one tonight in some way if I can find them. I think my favorite so far is probably, well, Top Gun Maverick, obviously, is probably my favorite. It's the one that I really want to win, but I know it won't win. So, of the more Oscar baity kind of films, I guess, I think Tar is still my favorite. I'm still thinking about that film, the Kate Blanchett movie, Tar. Absolutely loved that. And I'm still picking that film apart even now. Even when I was watching The Banshees of Inisherin, I was thinking about Tar and how much I really want to see that film again. But this would be up there. This would definitely be up there. I had a wonderful time with this. Love the cast of characters and just great performances across the board, especially Kerry Condon. I really, really liked her character in it, Siobhan. Yeah, I'm kind of repeating myself now, but I would absolutely recommend The Banshees of Inisherin if you haven't seen it already. If dark comedies are your thing, then this will be right up your street. And it's just a really fun, quirky film with a bit of a dark edge to it, you know, and I really love that about it. Carl says everything all the time is on Prime. If you have that, yeah, I do. Yeah, so I could check that out. So yeah, I'm going to get these 4 films watched. Even if I can't get all of the animated films watched, I'm going to try and get those watched too. If I include those, I've got 8 films to watch before the week's out, which is a lot of movies, and I have very limited time. So if all else fails, I'm just going to go for the Best Picture nominees, but I am going to try and get to some of those animated ones as well. But yeah, I might check that out tonight then. I'll have a look around, see what I can find. And as of course, when I get these films watched, I will be on here doing reviews. So please do subscribe to the channel for more reviews, discussions, and live streams as and when I do them. Give me a follow on Twitter as well for more updates on what to expect. It's the big push towards the Oscars. The Oscars will be happening on Monday the 13th in the early hours of the morning for us in the UK. I think it's like 1 a.m. I'll find out times. I'll find out where I can watch the damn ceremony. And I'll be live streaming that night. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I should have all these movie reviews out then. And then I can announce what we're going to be looking at after that. Because I've got a lot of ideas of what I want to bring to the channel. Some more retrospectives week to week and get back to regular content. Until then as well, if you're a Star Wars fan, the Mandalorian reviews will be happening every single Wednesday at 10 p.m. GMT. I'll hopefully be joined with JX Editor this week and hopefully for the remaining weeks as well to talk about the rest of Mandalorian Season 3. So hopefully we'll have a lot to say. So I will probably be back tomorrow with a review either on Everything Anywhere All at Once. What is the name? Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm going to forget that title constantly. Or whatever film I watch tonight, I'll be back tomorrow probably with some more reviews. And then Wednesday for Mandalorian. So thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you have a great night, and I will catch you guys soon. Take care.